Here's the thing, and I'll get to you in a second. The music is sort of out there. So Beethoven's going do-do-do-dink, do-do-do-donk, do-do-do-donk. Oh, yeah, that sounds right. So he's looking for that melody. Notice that these patterns, though, they're all potential patterns. So the composer is kind of discovering that pattern. In other words, it doesn't create it out of nothing. It's you see the sense in which it's sort of already there. And you've got to find that nice melody. You got to find that melody that's a beautiful melody. But it sort of already exists as a potential thing in the world. You see what I mean? Now, you have to, Rick has something to answer.
Yeah, I was going to say that would be in the same relationship that computer has with the internet, right? The internet is out there, you don't see it, it has infinity.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Then the computer has all those parts, and they need all those parts to get into that place that you can see, you cannot touch, but it's infinite, and you can get a lot of things.
A little bit, yeah. I'm not totally comfortable with your characterization of the internet, but I sort of see where you're going. Now we have some other stuff though. You want to say something anyway?
I don't know if I'm looking too much into it but you said like that they build the instruments in order to obtain the harmony. So did they believe that the body was made for a specific mind? They say like, oh, we want to, if we go by the same metaphor that you put, oh, I want to do this harmony, but the only way I can attain it is to build a guitar.
Yeah.
So I'm going to build a guitar. So did they believe that the mind, the body was created to assimilate the mind?
Yeah. See, now this is a great question. So look, there was some process through which the instruments came into existence. So in the case of the instruments, not talking about the mind yet, but just in the case of the instruments. So you had people, and people started sort of noticing music, discovering it, realizing that you could get melodies and pitches and notes, and they sort of discovered the scales. And they started to build things that are meant to be instruments. At first, maybe they just had a conch shell, or they had something they were drumming. They didn't really build it. But then they start to realize, hey, there are these harmonic properties. And they get smarter about it because they're interested in it. And that's the process that gives rise to these physical objects, the instruments. So there was a natural process. It happened to be human beings getting more musical and then saying, hey, I want something that, as you put it, can achieve that harmony. So I'm going to stretch the strings, and I'm going to figure out how I can loosen them and tighten them and change the pitch. Right? And then I'll this one tune differently than this one. And pretty soon they get, like the first, the instruments he's talking about when he talks about a lyre, that's spelled like that. And that's sort of an early sort of guitar like the Greeks had. And it's like a harp or a guitar. They've got strings that are stretched on a frame and they're plucking it. So you see it's pretty basic stuff. But in that case, these kinds of things, the instruments, came into existence in order to make those noises, in order to take advantage of those harmonic properties that are already there. Now, there was a process through which human beings came into existence. Now, that's a different process, but they have certain formal properties. This is a kind of formal property. Notice about music, you can represent it formally, and all these different kinds of instruments can instantiate the same thing. So hang on, I'm going to get these two guys, and then we'll get into both of your comments. Yes.
Is the human voice as part of those instruments?
So notice that the human voice, like the human mind, human brain, or whatever, has got the qualities that it needs. You've got these vocal cords. You're pushing your air through the vocal cords with the muscles in your larynx to make noises. the process was evolution, right? But notice that evolution takes advantage of properties of the world. So I can, so all I'm doing is moving some muscles over these vocal cords and making these sound compression waves in the air. And then in humans' ears, there's the tympanic membrane that vibrates. So again, it was the fact that there are these sound compression waves in the air, oscillations, you know, and the body, the product of evolution, is what, I mean, he doesn't know anything about that, is taking advantage of those properties that are there. Somebody else was over here, yeah.
So it's this association with the internet and music. That I want to clarify that the internet is a physical thing. It's
Yeah, I know that.
waves. It's actually waves that are there. You know, music wasn't exactly that. It's you know, it's music is in the mind. You create it, but it's not like it's in the air right now. You know.
Right. It's a potential.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I agree with what you're saying. Now, here's the parallel that y'all were getting at. So notice, you might try saying, as Simmias is saying, that say, and what is this representing? It's just like this, it's just something I'm making up. In this case, think about, you know, logic, say, being rational. So if you know this proposition is true, if X, then Y, you know the proposition X is true, you can conclude that Y is true. It's the simplest little chunk of logic that there is. You know, when I hear, when Master is getting his leash, we're going for a walk, Master's getting his leash, I thereby conclude we're going for a walk, okay? Very, very simple logical inference. Now, notice the reductive materialist is going to claim, well, what that is this physical brain state being in some particular electrochemical state or something, right? That's the way, and so there, just like the original claim that the harmony was a property of the physical body of the guitar, and here the claim is that this kind of harmony, that is rational capacity, rational thought, is the property of this physical body of the persons. This will be means. But look at this. You got Flipper. You got my favorite Martian. You got HAL 2000, supercomputer. And some other indefinitely large set of things that all have that cognitive capacity. And so it's the same situation as with the harmony. So with the rationality. Plato tends to think that mind is really rationality, and he's thinking about like logical and mathematical operations. I mean, you might think that there's a lot more to that than mind, but notice something, they all can, the belief that the fish are in the bucket, and they can all be in that state too. And if you believe that the fish are in the bucket, and if you desire to have some fish, you're going to make, you're going to make it true that you get to the bucket or something like that. And so it's the same case. That is, it looks like it's not going to be true that your mental state is just identical to your brain state, because it looks like there are multiple other kinds of physical things that can all have the same property. So remember what we were talking about last time when I was introducing you to Plato's forms. It looks, say, here is another example. Say you've got the Euclidean circle. I'm not very good at actually drawing real circles, but You've got the circle that you learn about in geometry class, which is an imaginary perfect circle. Now you've got the set of all circular objects. There's all the circular objects. Notice that none of the circular objects, the physical objects, right, because what we got here, notice, is what we have here is the distinction between matter and form. So this is the mind-body problem. To Plato is the form-matter problem, the relationship between form and matter. And that gets to what you were wondering about. Well, why does the matter participate in form? Now notice here, you can have a circular object made out of wood, a circular object made out of clay, a circular object made out of bone, a circular object made out of metal, rock. So notice that the property of being circular isn't something you can explain in terms of wood, or in terms of bone, or in terms of clay. It doesn't have anything to do with the physical properties of the matter. It's a formal property. These are formal properties. And Plato told us that in the part where we were saying, well, it's tall, it's red, it's wood, so it's a member of the set of all tall things, the set of all wood things, the set of all red things. So, in the 20th century, around 1940s, 1950s, when we started to get some good brain science, people took this position of reductive materialism. If you're going to be a materialist about the mind, it looked like sort of your first sort of naive take on that would be, well, if I'm a materialist, what I think is that what mental states are just physical states of the brain. You know, that would be your sort of first guess. In maybe the 1970s, around 1975, people started to realize that that was incorrect. It was incorrect because of the multiple realizability of the mental. And so you get, instead of reductive materialism, a view called functionalism, sometimes called non-reductive materialism. And that's the view that you can only characterize these mental properties in terms of their functional roles. You only have functional descriptions, not physical descriptions. That is really important for computer science. Notice you got, the designer says, here's what I need for this thing to do. He sends it down to the engineer. The engineer says, well, I'll use this material, I'll use this technology. The designer doesn't care how the engineer does it. The designer gives a functional specification. I need something that will do this and this and this. The engineer figures how to build something like that. Now, once we realize that we have to have a functional description of mental processes rather than a physical description, because the mental processes are multiply realizable, then we start looking at it that way, and that's really key to the development of computers over the last 50, 100 years. Around 2,500 years ago, in the 5th century before the birth of Christ, Plato understood this. Plato understood this. He says at 99a, Phaedo, and notice that that does appear to block at least a reductive materialism. Shows that it's not, shows that it's false. Because the mind is, like the music and like the geometrical properties, it's already, like Jasmine said, it's already kind of out there. It's any place in it, and then let me help myself to evolutionary biology, even though Plato didn't believe in evolutionary biology. He kind of knew about it because there was a guy named Empedocles who was kind of talking about selection. So he just thought it was wrong because Plato was against any kind of materialism or reductive materialism. It's not like he was naive about it. But let me just help myself to it.